Hey Stacy, how you doing?
Doing great. How you doing, Dallas?
I'm all right, man. Hey, so we're just here fooling around a little bit. We're gonna try to see how it goes, breaking down a couple of clips from the Hawks offense. So this is our first time doing this. Let's see how it goes. So let's talk about let's see. Let's talk about first of all the Hawks hammer screens. So this isn't an action that they use all the time, but you will see it used. So hammer screens were made popular by the San Antonio Spurs and Greg Popovich, at least made popular in the NBA by that team. But the basic idea is usually you'll have a ball handler who is going to run hard to one side of the court. So we'll see this happen here in a second. So here we have Trey Young all the way over here in the baseline. And ordinarily what happens in a hammer screen is while the ball handler is pushing to get to the baseline on one side of the court, on the weak side, you have a player, a shooter ordinarily at the wing, and he receives a back screen from on his unsuspecting defender that allows him to get to the corner where Trey Young, in this case, the ball handler, will have an opportunity to make a cross-court pass, Clyde's favorite, to a shooter in the corner who hopefully will be wide open because his defender was screened unsuspectingly. So timing matters a lot for hammer screens because you have to have the ball handler getting to the
where
corner.
is the hammer screen here?
So this would be the hammer screen right here.
Right. This is an off-ball screen.
That's correct.
Yep.
So timing is super important here because you have to have the ball handler get to the corner at the exact time, basically, that this player is floating down to the corner themselves. So here,
and it's the maximal chance of that defender perhaps being ball watching, right? I mean, how much does that play into it?
Absolutely, because they're thinking here, especially, about whether or not they need to come down and help or bump, right? Frequently, as the closest wing defender. Now, in this case, they're not going to be likely to have that responsibility. But you'll also notice a significant feature here is Capella's man has to have his attention fully on the roll man.
So he cannot help on the screen.
That's right. So this guy, in this case, Doug McDermott, it looks like.
Once a Nick, always a Nick. So I guess the question is why, to your point, right? If he doesn't have the help responsibility, why does this still work? Or is it because of the action or because of how much gravity Trey has? Is that the reason why? Because he doesn't have any direct responsibility, right? So why does this work on him?
Well, just in general, if you watch the Knicks defense, but this is true of NBA defense in general, when the ball is on the opposite side of the court, teams will often try to overload the strong side or at least move defenders that direction because they know that even though the ball travels a little bit faster than men do, they'll have time typically in ordinary circumstances to recover if a cross-court pass comes. And those cross-court passes are dangerous, don't come too frequently. So this is specifically designed to
and tough to execute, right? An accurate pass. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Not too many players can effectively, on a regular basis, throw these passes after hammer screens. Yeah. So this is designed to combat that feature of NBA defenses. So let's take a look at this one sort of as it materializes and see how it actually goes through. All right, so Trey's going to come up. He gets it. Essentially, that's a pick and roll. And you just can't beat that look, right?
For bogey, yeah.
Yeah, like this is a dream look here. So one more time. I've got a couple of examples here, but when McDermott is, and just look at how he doesn't even know what's happening at this point.
And how much does it matter that Collins is there as a dive option if I don't know, is that Sabonis was to fade, right?
Yeah, it matters a lot. So because of this pick and roll, and they choose to ice it here.
Which is what the Knicks do a lot, right? So
yeah, they do sometimes. Yeah, for sure. I think Tibbs has a reputation for ice, and he's used it less than his reputation would or made people expect him to use it in New York. But he does definitely. It is used. So Sabonis's role here is to
stop the Collins roll. Yeah,
stop the Collins roll. That's right.
And then you end up, and so I think this is fascinating. The two things I would ask is, if they run this against the Knicks, what is the way to defend it? And I mean, I'm sure you have counters to it, right? So if they defend it too much one way, then they probably have counters. That would be number one. And number two, can the Knicks use something like this with their personnel that I'm envisioning very much with big eyes, Reggie Bullock playing the guy in the corner, getting that 3-pointer, right?
Yeah. So the Knicks could definitely have the shooters to do this. The problem is, and they have said a few of these, but the problem is having a ball handler who
so can, even Rose, you think, isn't at that level of
Rose could do it. Yeah, I think Rose could do it. But even so, he's not the same level of passer as like Trey Young, right?
Yep.
I just just pay attention again to how impressive this timing is for this pass. Like, he throws the ball now.
Yeah.
Nobody is here. He's not throwing the ball to anybody. Right?
He's throwing, I mean, that's Tom Brady shit, right?
Yeah. Like, look at that. He cannot see Bogey either through Sabonis and Capella.
He just knows he's going to be there, right? So
yeah. And that ball is,
and he's falling out of bounds, right? So he has very little margin for time.
And this is a theme. This is a theme with hammer screens and why they're so effective and impressive. So this is an action that you will see for sure the Hawks use, but primarily with Trey Young as the ball handler, and inside pick and rolls where he ends up running towards the baseline like that. So it's just a thing to be aware of.
And how would the Knicks defend that more effectively? I mean, how would you defend that given our personnel?
So it's tough. What you that's the Floppy series. If you're going to defend it, essentially, you have to have on these side pick and rolls, you have to have
so in this particular situation, that's Capella. Yeah. And then if that's Bogey, that's probably Reggie. That's fair to say, or RJ maybe, right?
Yeah. So what you really have to do is make sure, because there's no way that you're not going to have this guy, McDermott here, in this case, on an island. So he needs to be aware that this is happening. And just because of the nature of the play, where Capella comes up behind him, right? And where his attention is here, where it is. And you can even see, like, in this case, it looks like he messes with his face a little bit. Like he's like, oh, I'm off ball. I'm good. The ball's way over there. So he needs to be aware of what's happening here. But ideally, you have your bump man, which is really hard to do because he's paying attention here, call out the screen.
Yeah.
And alert him that this is coming.
And that would be Noel or Taj. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. It depends on who the screen. So here, this would be Randall in our defense.
Okay.
Provided he's guarding John Collins, right?
So where's the center here?
Right here. Oh, and here's
our center, right? So if Sabonis is the Randall, right? Who is the center in this?
Oh, Sabonis is on Capella here, so he's playing the 5. It looks like.
So it would be Taj or Noel, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that's the hammer or the hammer set. You will see.
But can we go back to that? Sorry, it looked like also McDermott sunk to the middle.
Here's another example. Oh, do you want to see that one again? Sorry.
Yeah, because it looked like it wasn't just the screen, right? It looked like McDermott also sunk to the middle. If you watch this, right? So McDermott, he does not go. He's not worried about Bogey at all. He's trying to get to the middle, and then he realizes that, oh shit, I'm screened, right?
Yeah.
That would be another problem, right? And I think with the Knicks defense, given, protect the paint at all costs, that could be more of an issue, right? So
absolutely. So let's see. That's 1,000%. So here's another example of the hammer that we can watch. So we'll have again the same action to get Trae. To get Trae the ball. He comes up and looks like he's going to set a little screen for Capella. He sort of ghosts it. This is exactly the action that we saw in the last play. And then he wheels around. And this turns essentially into a side pick and roll.
Because Collins is there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So now look, the big is forced to help here. Again, it puts you in what roughly looks like at least ice coverage. Even though.
Yeah. And because Rui is not a great defender, he has the alley-oop to Collins, but if it was better defended, he would also have the outlet to not outlet, but the cross court to Bogey again.
Yeah, and you can see the screen here. And in fact, he does hit that.
It's a pretty tough action for us to defend.
Oh yeah, it's a really, really great set. It's a great set. Not just us. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what team, what defense you are. It's a great set.
So is this something you would expect them to? I don't know how much you watch them, but do you think it's going to be something they use more frequently all the time? Or like I think OB has made great strides, but is not probably ready for these kinds of actions. Where would you see them using this, and what kind of things should Tom Thibodeau be telling the Knicks to adjust to?
So this is not going to be the most frequent action they go to. The most frequent set they go to. They have a lot of other things that they run. And especially since Nate McMillan has become coach, my sense is, I tried to watch through a relatively large number of games, and my sense is that they are going to the pick and roll as the primary action less frequently than they did, where they often will flow into it or find ways of creating things that are a lot like pick and rolls. For example, this, right? But that have other creative elements built in. And there's any number of ones they use. And I have a piece that should be coming out in the Strickland here in just a hot sec that will go through a lot of those sets if you're interested in looking at them. But they'll use this. My sense is this wasn't their most commonly used set though, but this is a set that I would be shocked if we don't see a few times through the series.
And again, for the Knicks, how would you, if you're Tibbs, what do you tell your team to be ready for? Or what do you tell them to do?
Yeah, so you just have to be aware that they set hammers. Hammers are not only used by the Hawks. Like I said, they're popularized by the Spurs, and the NBA is a copycat league. So, other teams use this. And the way to defend it is just, you have to be, as this defender here, right? When you're guarding a shooter and a pick and roll is going on this side of the court, you have to be ready.
You can't just be collapsing
for that back screen. Yeah, well, you're probably, Tibbs is going to have them collapse no matter what, but they just have to be prepared for that action. Because you'll note just like a few seconds makes a difference. So, he almost gets out here. But look how long he's surprised for, right? Like see, like, look how long that is. And yet he's still almost high fives, the shooter. That's obviously a great NBA look. But if he just is ready for this, if he's alert right now and starts, he spins,
goes around, and then goes around Capella, right?
Right. Yeah, he could close that out. And that's really how that's how you defend it. Now, one of the things that's so awesome about the Hawks hammer series is that they use it, as we were just talking about, right, off this little action. So ordinarily teams use it in side pick and rolls, but this defender here has the opportunity to see the pick and roll developing and realize, oh, I know it's possible that a hammer screen happens, right? Because it's a side pick and roll, but this happens so quickly and it's not set up like an ordinary side pick and roll. that he doesn't have the opportunity to really think about what's happening, which is another way that this ends up being very effective.
Have the Knicks run this kind of hammer screen before?
They've used it a few times. I've spied it over the course of the season, but not super frequently.
Right, and I would imagine the personnel that works with it are something like Quickly, Randall, then Reggie in the corner, or Barrett in the corner.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, anybody who can shoot, and a little bit of movement shooting is even better because, you're floating down.
It's great to say Barrett can shoot now, right? So that's
incredible.
That's a relief.
Incredible, yeah. Do you want to quickly go through Floppy?
Yeah, it's good.
All right. So a floppy screen essentially is set up, and this is like I would say a slight variation of floppy, but ordinarily what you have is you get this little cluster down in the paint. If you've played 2K, lots of people have run floppy in 2K. It's so you have two screeners facing one direction and one screener facing another, and a movement shooter. And the movement shooter now has the option of which way they want to come up to the wing.
And do teams normally start this out of horn sets, or because this looks like something you would normally start out of horn sets? But
yeah, that's right. It's pretty much when you walk down, it looks like horns, because you are going to have, a big here and a big here ordinarily setting the screens. Sometimes teams will pull it this way with an emphasis of trying to get a guy closer to the corner when they come around the screens, but ordinarily it's going to be in that horns sort of look. So you'll see here, the shooter has options. Ops come this way. Bogey curls around, gets a little shot. You'll see it action again. So Bogey comes and sets up. So you can see it's not strictly speaking, horns, but it's horns adjacent. Here they're coming down a little bit further. And you'll see in this case, he fakes like he's going right, which is really difficult for this defender, because he's now got to go over two screens, plus there's the setup that it could go the other direction. So there's three different instances of the Hawks using this floppy set. One thing related to this that's worth noting is this is a very you run down the court and sort of get stationary and set up kind of set. And you'll notice that the person that this is run for is Bogey. So the Hawks have this tendency just in general. Anytime there's going to be these sort of stationary setup sets, they're usually designed for Bogey. So it's a thing like as a defender to be aware of, and especially to be aware of when the Hawks are running like sideline out of bounds plays or baseline out of bounds plays, because the majority of those for the Hawks actually are seem to be designed for Bogey, because they're those sort of stationary plays where you're going to have a movement. You want to have a movement shooter come off somewhere. So just as a defender guarding Bogey, you want to be aware of that. And then as the defender guarding the ball, who can pop off sometimes, on the out of bounds plays to help, Bogey is often the guy you're going to want to help on. Yeah, but yeah, so that's Hawks floppy and Hawks hammer.
So how would with the Hawks floppy, right? So I think to a lot of our fans it would be, once there's a clusterfuck, what do you do, right? So how is Tibbs going to be coaching guys to recognize this? And this doesn't look a lot like a hammer, but what kind of counters do we have to be aware of here?
So I think we see a little bit of a counter in this third instance, but it's not maybe the most devastating one. So here, here's Bogey's man, and he's reading this setup, because this is one that's very obvious. Hammer is like, disguised. Floppy, when your guys walk down and get stationary like this, it's pretty clear what's happening, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I wonder what play is happening, but there's so many screens happening and so many options that it's still often pretty effective.
The element of surprise doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, exactly. So one strategy here, and this is what I believe this is Brooke. Is that Brooks 24?
Yep.
My
favorite player in the Grizzlies.
Collins MVP. Yeah. So he's preparing. He's not coming to actually connect to Bogey. And one reason teams sometimes will do something like this is because the ultimate action typically is going to end up with Bogey either here or here getting the ball. And this gives him a easier line where he doesn't have to fight through the screens to get to those two spots, right?
Yep.
So it's sort of like top blocking without being connected to the shooter. The counter for that defense, though, is just to pop to the corner, right? And that's what he does there. So most teams will actually have, and I think we see that in the very first instance here, they'll have their defenders with Bogey or with the shooter, and they'll follow them around the screens and trail them around the screens. In that case, then these turn into basically this turns into basically like defending a pin down or a pick and roll, where now Sabonis has the 2-on-1 that he has to figure out what to do with, right? Either Capella.
Lobber, yeah.
And one of the particularly great things about this for the Hawks is that this basically turns into now an empty side pick and roll. So there's nobody to help on Capella. So that makes Sabonis wary about stepping up. He stays back, and that results in an easy jumper, right? So yeah, I mean, my big takeaway from watching a lot of Hawks offensive film, and I go through a bunch of different plays, neither of these two in the piece that's coming out in the Strickland, but my big takeaway is that their offense is damn good. It's creative, it's fast paced, it's fun. It's a really cool offense, and it's gonna be a really, really interesting matchup, I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think this has been great. And I guess, in terms of personnel, are there certain people you would think would be more equipped to guard these kind of actions, or?
Well, let me toss that to you. So who do you think? So in this case, you want somebody who's a great trail defender. So who do you think is our best trail defender? Probably like somebody who can like chase guys around screens.
I mean, I could be diplomatic or I could be frank.
You could be frank. No. But who? Yeah, like so. No, just be. I just want your on it. Like your What's your view about who?
I think we're talking about trail. Like the thing is, if we were playing Eric Bledsoe, or if we were playing, one of these physical guards, I would get a lot of I would understand the Alfred Payton starting decision. In this series, where it's a lot about navigating screens, reading actions, length to close out. It's not, I mean, I get if people don't play Frank, but to be honest, I think even Rose is better than Elf. I think Quickly is definitely better than Alfred Payton that's navigating screens and trail defending. But I think even Rose is, and the Rose part might be more debatable. I've gotten pushback from noted way more basketball experience than me, Benji, in that Quickly does get, because of his size, the effort is there, but he will get caught up on screens sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. But I think I would try those things even from a purely defensive standpoint. I think there are interesting matches you can look at if the Hawks aren't going to be playing. Can you hide a Quickly or a Rose or an Elf on someone that's not Trae? I think that would be worth, and then you move Barrett or Bullock down. I think those would be options. But I think what you're really highlighting here is that everyone's head's got to be at a swivel, right? So that's what that's at the end of the day, everyone's going to need help. Whoever we put on Trey Young, and that's the thing, right? A lot of your work, or a lot of what we've gone through, and this has been excellent. A lot of it is focused on the kind of actions they run, and we haven't even really talked about the greatness of Trey Young to make that all work as much. And there's no one, like even Frank, it's not going to shut that off, right? So it's going to have to be a team effort in terms of being, and we just have to hope that Tibbs is watching the same kind of film that Dallas is. So,
oh, he 1,000% has watched this, yeah, a million times. So there won't be too many. I mean, maybe if they come up with some new stuff, there will be some surprises, but there won't be surprises for the most part. Yeah, they'll be prepared. Yeah,
I mean, I guess what it's interesting because I think what most people, I'll throw this to you too, right? Like you have looked at a lot of off-ball actions, and I think what having watched the 3 Hawks games, particularly the last one, what terrifies me is drop coverage with Nerlens Noel. I don't think Gibson was particularly better. Definitely don't think Nerval Pell was better, and this is not a Nerlens Noel, trying to rip him, but Trae missed a lot of. That's the thing. Trae has not shot well against us, right? Yeah. He is good at floaters generally, and he missed a ton, which are not looks we really want to give up, or I don't think we want to give up.
So I don't mind giving up the floater if I'm being honest.
I don't think it's a quickly floater though. Like I feel like we've been lucky there.
I would rather give up
that than a lob to Capella, obviously, but
right. And so when you take away the floater, it requires you to usually have the big step up, and that's going to require you to help off a shooter to bump Capella.
Yeah.
And that opens up
but I almost feel like we can't even bump Capella, in those situations.
Well, yeah, and
because he's so fucking big,
Oh, that's true. There's that. So it's already hard. But then it opens up if you do bump, it opens up one of their shooters.
Bogey, yeah.
And that puts you in a scramble scenario. So if you just look at the numbers, Trey Young points per possession as a pick and roll finisher, 0.98 points per possession. That's actually pretty good for like if you're in terms of like league average.
So for context, do you know Rose or just for our listeners? But
I don't know what Rose is, but notice 0.98 isn't very good in terms of what their offense actually puts up on an average possession. They're like 1.14, I think, points per possession.
Pretty fucking insane, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's with transition, of course, but pick and roll Trae shooting a shot is not. It's not the worst outcome for a defense.
Yeah, that's my sense of things. So like if you can goad him into shooting those while he has especially a rear view contest, like the trail defender is connected, and you can then stay home on shooters, and just like if you can make Trey Young beat you by shooting and not with his passing, because I'm not scared of him as a shooter anywhere on the court, basically. I really am not. Except when he's like in the corner, all like as an off-ball player, then he's like, yeah, then I'm afraid of him stationary. But he's not normally shooting stationary, so like I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about him as a finisher, or excuse me, not a finisher, as a passer.
Especially on those lobs, right?
Lobs and hitting shooters. He manipulates defenders with his eyes really well. He's awesome at it. So unfortunately, I'm at 5% battery, so I need to grab my charger, but maybe this is a good time to end our first little clip session, and we'll be doing more of these during the actual the series. So y'all should keep an eye out for them. We'll try to break down what happens during some of the games after the games.
Yeah, this was great. I hope everyone's watching has learned as much as I have. So really appreciate Dallas taking the time to 101 me through some of these basketball concepts.
This was a ton of fun. Can't wait to do it again, Stacy. Cool. All right, take care, everybody.